Today, we are joined by Stephen Curran, a conservative candidate in North Vancouver Capilano by-election. This election is about far more than a riding, in my opinion. With the balance of power in Ottawa potentially shifting, voters in North Vancouver have an opportunity to send a message that could be felt across this country. Today, we're going to discuss Stephen's background, the challenges facing his riding, and his vision for the future, and why he believes this election matters. Welcome to the show.
Thanks very much, Mark. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so I'm actually very interested in your story. And so today we're going to go over it. Before we do that, I wanted to mention that, and this is before we start talking about politics, I did some homework on you, and there's a famous person with your last name. And this patriot, I would call him, has a long legacy. His name is John Philpott Curran. He's one of Ireland's most respected lawyers and defenders of civil liberties. He has a quote, and this quote really resonates with me, is the price of liberty is eternal vigilance. So you have some shoes to follow here, and with this patriot, and I believe that with your background, he was also a lawyer, and you are a lawyer, and he's famous for justice and fighting for freedom. And I felt like it was something that I want to share with the audience.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, and I think that this by-election that you mentioned at the outset is our opportunity, our community's opportunity to exercise some of that vigilance over this Liberal government. So I'm really excited about the comparison, and I did not know about him. You've prompted me to go look him up after this interview.
Absolutely. And so my first question for you is: Canadians have do you think Canadians have become comfortable with leaving politics and public affairs to other people?
I sure hope not. I think that there certainly is a class of individual in our society, right throughout the country, that they turn on during election time. They listen to the slogans, they listen to the interviews, and then they make up their mind, and then they go back and carry on with their lives. And I'm certainly not wired that way. I don't think you're wired that way. And I do actually think that there is a hunger for engagement right across the country, and I think certainly in my riding as well. I've been door knocking in my community this year for several months already, and I'm actually pretty impressed with the number of people who have brought up issues that are right on my radar, the things I want to talk about. We're going to probably talk about this a little bit later in the program, but property rights is one of the issues that everybody seems to understand. They've seen it in the news. They're asking questions. They have a hunger for the answers and the results. So I think that in any country the size of Canada, you're going to have people that are engaged, people that are not engaged. I've been impressed with the number of people in my riding that have been engaged and frankly are aware that there is a by-election coming. So I'm not really doing too much educating on the doorstep so far.
Well, that's surprising for me. I like to hear that. So that's great. So I want to, before we go into some of the itty gritty, I want to talk about your decision as a successful lawyer. Maybe you could talk about that a little bit. And then what made you decide to run, to be in politics?
Well, I think the decision to run this time, really dates back to the first time, because I was actually the candidate, as you know, in 2025 for this riding. Didn't get the result that we were looking for, but we outperformed past performances for the Conservatives in this riding. We gained some momentum. But that decision was one that I entered into with my wife. We've got two small children, live here in central Lonsdale. And the proposition of running for any level of office, especially federal office, in this community, in this day and age, taking you away from your practice, it's a big one. It takes a lot of our time. When I say that I'm competing as a candidate, that short form for my entire family is competing with me, because my son comes out door knocking with me. He's editing videos on the side. He's picking up those skills. My daughter is recording door knocking results on the phone when I'm out walking the neighborhood in the rain. And my wife is off, jetting off to Walmart or the Costco, picking up supplies for various events that we're doing across the riding. So going back to early 2023 is when I decided initially to pursue the nomination here in my riding. I'd always been involved in politics, mostly on a volunteer basis. That's kind of all I really had the bandwidth for in my practice. But I was always there. I was contributing during campaign time. I was helping to inform and influence the candidates that I wanted to support, and tried to also have some influence, at least locally here, on the policies that we would try to get implemented on the national stage. And that was satisfying for a moment. When 2023 came around, I had a bit of a break in my career where I was looking to change gears, and I had an opportunity, a window where I was going to be able to try something different. And at the same time, I had many of my colleagues on the board here in North Vancouver that were asking me, would you consider running? And it just so happened that that window kind of lined up with the opportunity to present as a candidate for nomination. So we did that. My wife and I made that decision, and the rest is sort of history. We went right through 2024. I was nominated in April of 2024, and then we started to work at covering the entire neighborhood, the entire community, door knocking, doing events, connecting with members of my community, and right up through the 25 election. And as I said, we didn't get the result we were looking for. We made some gains. We made a lot of connections, got a lot of support from people that didn't traditionally in the past vote conservative. And that led to a period of reflection during the summer, whether I was going to go back into my practice full time. And we already started hearing rumors of a potential by-election going back to the middle part of 2025. So that kind of kept the proposition or the idea of going back and competing once again at the back of my mind while carrying on my practice on my own. And when the news kind of unfolded this spring that, in fact, our current member of parliament, Jonathan Wilkinson, was preparing to resign to assume the ambassadorship to the EU, that put the question right back into full focus. And my wife and I again had the conversation. We decided that the issue set really hasn't changed. The motivations for first wanting to do this really hasn't gone away. So the calculation was pretty simple. The vigilance was there right throughout that time, though, and that's part of the engagement that it appears one of my ancestors was very prominent about speaking.
Absolutely. I find it truly amazing that you're getting your kids involved. I think that's great. Our younger generation, and to have everybody in your family buy into your mission is inspiring. It actually probably propels you even further to really commit when you have the whole family buy into it.
One of the most meaningful things that happened to me during the 2025 campaign, we were in the writ period, and my kids are, I say young, it's all relative. My son is 13, my daughter is 9. They were obviously a year younger last year. But I missed a lot of dinner times and a lot of tuck-ins during the writ period because you're doing events in the evening, you'd come home late. And I went into my daughter's bedroom, so she was 8 at the time, and I caught her just before she sailed off to sleep. And she I didn't even know she was still awake. I walked into her room and she said, "Hey, Daddy," and I went over and I gave her a kiss on the forehead. And I said, "Oh, I'm really sorry I missed dinner tonight. I'm really sorry that I missed tuck-in." And she said, "Don't worry, Daddy. We know that you're doing it for us." And it was just a matter of fact statement that she said. She at the tender age of 8 kind of understood the sacrifices that her parents were making, the fact that neither of us were around as much as we usually are during the writ period. And that really stuck with me. And it was, that is essentially the byproduct of involving them right throughout the process. It was important for my wife and I to ensure that they saw their parents standing up for what they believe in, taking responsibility for the future that they want to see. And so I think that everybody's circumstances are different. I've got 2 great kids that are engaged and want to learn. They are very curious and ask a lot of questions. And I think that it's important for us to make sure that they're along the road for this journey. And I've even got my own personal story of watching my father and his engagement in politics back in Alberta. But I'll leave that for now unless you want to come back to it.
No, I thank you so much for sharing that story. I have 2 young children, and they always want, they question what I'm doing with my content, and I think that your story really resonated because they often say you're fighting for change, and I said that's right. I am. I'm fighting for change. I'm fighting for a better Canada. I'm fighting for freedom, and every single day I feel like I'm making a difference, and I look forward to you succeeding at that mission as well. And so, with that, I just want to know what the values that have guided your life. and how that, and your career, the experience you got in your career, what's that going to bring to Ottawa? There's some really unique people in Ottawa that bring different things to the Conservatives, and I'm just looking to see what you would bring.
So you mentioned earlier on that I'm a lawyer. I've got my own practice right now. I actually started my practice in the United States. I was a lawyer for 5 years in New York before coming back home to Western Canada. I mentioned that I'm originally from Alberta, but wanted to come back out to Western Canada. We landed here in Vancouver in 2010. And I was practicing downtown for a number of years before I moved my practice to a smaller firm here on the North Shore. And then finally, basically working out of my own home, servicing my clients. Um, Building a practice takes a great investment. You know, it's based on relationship building. It's based on the trust that you get from your clients. It's based on your performance as well, too. Being a strong advocate. I'm not a litigator, although I'd like to be one day. I think that I think that's a very interesting type of practice. But I'm a corporate business commercial solicitor. And what that means is that my clients typically pay me to get their deals done. They ask for my advice on complex business issues that I need to be really on point with. And the building up of that reputation, the building up of those relationships takes years. And I'm putting that to the side for right now, to pursue this political path. But I think that the skills I've learned while building that practice, building those relationships, speaking out on behalf of my clients, what true advocacy looks like, those are all essential components of what I think our elected representatives are really hired to do by their constituents. My philosophy, and probably another reason why I've decided now to pursue office, under the leadership of Pierre Poilievre and under the current framework of the Conservative Party, is that I really feel that ideologically and philosophically, there's an ethos in this party that I really truly identify with. I think that Pierre has said in the past that if he were forming a new party tomorrow, he'd call it the Mind Your Own Darn Business Party. And that to me really resonates, because I do think that sometimes our default position when we have a problem in society is to figure out, well, how can government solve this problem for us? And there absolutely is a role for government institutions. I think that some of the shining examples of what we got here as government services, people look around the world and they envy them, or at least they envy the notion of them as they've understood them historically. I think that the default position really should be, how do we as government, how do we as agents of the state facilitate and empower the individual and the groups in society to solve their own problems? And I think it's a much more efficient way of tackling issues, whether it's economic or social. I think that these are strategies that are much more sustainable than constant intervention by our government apparatus. And I think that is a moment in time and a moment in our philosophy that I truly identify with, being a conservative. So those are some of the philosophical underpinnings of my journey. And I think that this is probably also speaking a little bit to my Alberta upbringing, that I think that less government oftentimes is good, and I think that having a case by case analysis of when it's appropriate for state intervention is probably the best way to go. So that's kind of where I'm coming from, and I think some of the lessons I've learned through my professional background that I hope to bring to Ottawa with me.
No, I completely agree with you. You know best. I'm talking about the people out there. You know best what's best for you. And people are very bright, coming together, figuring out solutions. But when you have the government intervene every single time, it really crushes the morale of people. And I agree with you completely. I just learned something new. I did 14 years in my career before I started doing social media. I was a commercial mortgage lender. And one of the things, like, I had to deal with lawyers just like yourself to complete the deals. And one of the things that is so important is your reputation. Your reputation is everything. And especially in that field where there's so many, the loans are just so large, the deals are so large, you really have to have a incredible reputation. So you're already starting off on a good note in my book, based on your profession and what you've been able to do. So I want to move over here onto the how important is this by-election? Like it really feels like we are at a moment here in Canadian history, and this by-election, starting from the West and we're moving east, is so important. What would this message send to Ottawa, this by-election? Like,
Well, I think that I look at it, and obviously I have a vested interest and maybe a slightly biased perspective on this, but I think this by-election is essential, and it's very rare when you look at Canadian history of elections where you've got a situation, a newly formed majority with some of the floor crossers in Ottawa that is really just at the cusp of being a majority. You've got some seats that are coming up for by-election, a few back east, but I think this is maybe the only one that we're going to see out west, possibly this summer. And you mix all that together and you realize that right here in North Vancouver, Capilano, we have an opportunity, I think, to not change who our government is, not change who the prime minister is. Those questions, I think, are resolved for the time being. That's going to be solved at the next general election. But what we have is a true unique opportunity to send a message about some of our regional and local priorities and make them priorities of the attention of Canadians, put it on the agenda for a national audience. And why I say a national audience, I think that this is going to be a very competitive race. I think that notwithstanding the fact that we weren't successful back in 2025, I think that there's a number of people in our riding that are frustrated with what they, I think, consider to be more talk and less action around some of the priorities that were talked about just last year in the general election. We were told many things during the general election about the urgency of the moment, about the challenges from the United States, the challenges internationally, the economic challenges that were looming on the horizon. And I heard a lot of talk about generational building and generational approvals and things that we're going to be building at speeds we've never seen before. And I take the comment that you can't expect change to happen immediately, but when you are campaigning, as I think Marc Carney and the Liberals did back in April of 2025, you're campaigning on the basis of promises of results, not of best efforts, and you fail to deliver those results on the timelines that even you set out. Then I think that there's a fair critique and a fair criticism that voters like myself and yourself and other people in my riding have an opportunity to weigh in and say, hold on a second, what was promised and what was actually delivered. So I'm a big proponent of walking the walk, not just simply talking the talk. I think that, and that sounds cliche, but I think that I'm not getting into this simply to go to Ottawa every 2 weeks or so, stand up, ask a question in question period, get on TV, and then come back to my riding and cut ribbons. I recognize priorities that need attention in my riding, whether I'm a member of the opposition or if one day I form part of a government as a conservative. I think that it's going to be important that I'm delivering to my constituents. And I've also told people on the campaign trail, not just this year, but also during the past election, that I have every expectation I'm going to be effective, that I'm going to be an effective advocate, that I'm going to be able to push for the results that are going to be meaningful to my constituents. And if for some reason I'm not able, maybe it's because I'm a political novice, or maybe I'm Mr. Smith going to Ottawa and just have grand designs, but don't really understand how the system operates, then I'm prepared to sit down and let somebody else take this over. I want to be effective. I don't want to just be a mouthpiece. I don't want to just be somebody that goes there and goes through the motions. I want to get results for my constituents. And I think that, going and spending the time on the doorsteps that I have over the past 2-3 years and listening to the stories and listening to the frustrations, all of that is for naught unless there's delivery. So I think that I'm excited about it. I think the by-election truly is going to draw the eyes of the nation on this race. I think that it's going to be a very competitive race. We're already starting to hear rumors about who I'm going to be up against on the Liberal side. I still don't know the other parties yet, but I think that it's going to be watched and talked about. And I think that the people in North Vancouver, Capilano are going to have the benefit of a large megaphone during this by-election.
Yeah, I mean, you know the numbers. I mean, they have a razor slim majority. And so if you win this one and then there's another one in Ontario, there could be something else. I mean, it is so important this by-election. I see it. I mean, if you could take it, that you'll also get a voice for the people of the riding. We're going to get into the history of your riding and what the issues are, but I want to first hear about you. You mentioned that you were going door to door.
Yeah.
What exactly are people talking about? What's the number one concern that the people in your writing have? What frustrations do you keep on hearing? And I also want to hear what has surprised you the most.
Well, I think that the number one thing that we've been hearing, and this is probably a byproduct of the recently completed BC provincial conservative leadership, is the talk about property rights and the risk that many see to their title in the wake of Cowichan. Questions around the Musqueam agreement that was negotiated and signed, presumably behind closed doors in February. There are a lot of questions about what this means for people's homes. For many of us, myself included, our biggest investment, our biggest familial asset, and going beyond just the residential or the personal. The questions around what this is going to do to our investment climate. I have a client in the real estate world, real estate investing world, and he is local. He's been a heavy BC investor for his entire life. He's got investments in different parts of Canada and internationally as well. And he told me just 2 weeks ago, he called me up, said, until we get certainty around this issue with Cowichan and fee simple interest, I'm simply not investing in British Columbia anymore. This is not an international investor that we're trying to draw into the province. This is somebody that's born and bred here in on the North Shore, in fact, and he's come to the business conclusion that he can't invest in his own home province for the duration of this confusion. So this is something that we're hearing right across the riding. I go around doors and I do my intro. I remind people about the by-election. They tell me they already know about it. And then I say, well, one of the issues I really want to be able to speak clearly about is this issue of property rights. And they say, yeah, we're on top of that. We've been watching this. We've got a lot of questions. I think that it's a very delicate topic because it can be very potentially divisive depending on how you land on the issue. I think that my critique on that particular file, I think, really resides with the way that different levels of government have really dealt with the file. I think that we've done much through our governments to create confusion. There's a lack of clarity over really what's at stake, and I think that it's actually going to set back, for example, reconciliation if we don't get this key question right. Affordability is also top of mind for most people. I think on the North Shore, we are a very well educated and, relatively speaking, it's an affluent community. That's a generalization. Not everybody's got the same means, obviously, and but everybody is affected by the affordability issues. I think that you walk through the grocery store and you're putting things back on the shelf that you think, well, maybe next week. Those are choices that we didn't have to make, a simple 5 years ago, 10 years ago. These are the material deviations from what I knew growing up and from what most people really experienced a short time ago. So affordability is still a very key concern. I think that that's really tied to some macro issues in relation to our government finances and the way that we've been printing money all these years and leading to these inflationary deficits. I think that people are not necessarily buying that. We're just dealing with many of the same pressures that other countries are dealing with: international trade flows, wars across the oceans. I think that many people are starting to really realize that, even comparatively speaking, you look at ourselves and our peer group in the G7, we're not faring as well as we should. We're not faring as well as our southern neighbor in terms of food inflation. And there's no real good response or answer coming from our government on those issues. I'll mention one more issue that I think has come up more recently, and I think this is in the wake of some of the news around the North Shore Wastewater Sewage Treatment Plant, the settlement with Acciona. This is top of mind of a lot of North Shore ratepayers. I think that they're still burning from the apparent iniquity that was hoisted on them by Metrovan in terms of how to pay for the cost, the increased cost on the build out of the facility. And I think on the what appears to be some degree of mismanagement on the project that has led to many delays and problems with the financing. So I think that that is a signature example of a project that has gone wrong and has cost a lot of people a lot of money. And there's a resentment that the response is just to simply go back to the ratepayers and say, okay, you're going to pay some more to cover this difference. But that's also tied to a broader discussion here on the North Shore about how we as a region, we as a local region, have grown so quickly over the last several years. But also up the Sea to Sky Highway and the Sunshine Coast and the ferry traffic has grown quite a bit, to the extent that we're sharing a lot of the same road networks, for example, a lot of the same local infrastructure. And I think people are starting to get really frustrated about what they're seeing as additional weights on the upper levels highway, trying to get over into Vancouver across one of the two bridges during rush hour. It's a hopeless venture. So I think that there are a lot of issues around our local infrastructure that people are frustrated by, and they want to hear solutions. They want to hear people talking about it. And I think they also want to have, a representative of all levels, but a representative certainly from the federal level, taking on some kind of a leadership role in mobilizing action around some of the perceived problems, getting the key people around the table that we can actually get talking about the solutions, and then lobbying for the financing that's going to be required to get these things done.
Absolutely. One thing that I always tell people, I say, Canada should be the richest country on planet Earth. We have everything. We have the second largest landmass. We have the number one most fresh running water. We have all the critical minerals that the world is begging for. We also have the fourth largest oil reserves. There's no reason why we should not be prosperous. The best healthcare, most affordable food and real estate. So whatever we've been doing over the last decade, it is not working. We need a change. We need a change of how we do business, how we do things. And I believe that change is coming. We just need to get there. One of the things I want you to go a bit deeper on this waste management. I don't know if people really realize, but I looked at the numbers. It doesn't seem fair that the usage and the cost to each person, it seems like you're using a certain amount, but the cost really falls on the taxpayer of your riding.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I think that what I like to tell people when I'm engaging with them in the community is that I don't understand the decision that was taken to basically give a disproportionate burden to North Shore ratepayers on the cost overruns that are basically due to the fact that there was a problem with the prior contractor. There's still a open debate as to who is responsible, whether it was shared responsibility between the contractor and the authority, Metrovan, in managing the project. Hopefully, we'll get to the bottom of that eventually. But I certainly didn't mismanage the build out. I don't think you did either, Mark. I don't think that anybody here on the North Shore did, and yet we're being asked to pay for it. So I think that there's a real problem there. It's a breakdown of accountability that people really bristle at. There are times when in events such as this, I think that really crystallize the thinking of people right across different party lines, different political affiliations. I have yet to hear anybody on the doorsteps of North Vancouver or West Vancouver saying, you know what, lay off the criticisms of the wastewater sewage treatment plant. They knew what they were doing. We'll pay our additional burden, and let's just be done with it. Nobody actually reacts that way at all. Everybody has an adverse reaction to being asked to pay for things that they weren't responsible for. And so, I think that the role of the federal government, obviously, this is not a federal project. It does have federal touch points in that it's a response of this community to the federal regulations on emissions that are going out, the wastewater emissions that are going out into the ocean. So this is our way of complying with those federal regulations. And of course, there was a federal investment of, I think, $200 million back in 2016, 2017 to kickstart this project. So we stepped up and paid for what was originally supposed to be a third of the original capital cost of the project. I think that that entitles our federal institution to ask some questions and to wonder what's going on, who is responsible, how do we avoid these types of problems in the future. This is not simply about throwing more money at a problem. This is about demanding accountability, finding out what was broken, and making sure that it's fixed for the next time that we do these things. This is not going to be the last capital project that we build, hopefully on the North Shore or anywhere in British Columbia. I think it behooves us to make sure that we get it right.
Do you know what the number figure is that the taxpayer is on the hook per household for this thing? I
I've
heard
seen,
numbers are
yeah, I've seen the numbers float around a little bit, but it's somewhere between, I think, $600 to $700 per year per ratepayer over the course of the next 30 years. So
wow,
how's that for a long-term commitment?
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this thing needs to be resolved. So this is perfect in this segment to go. Jonathan Wilkinson represented the riding for years, and this has been an issue in the riding for years. So do you know what where his stance was on this, and where is there a potential, is there an potential ability to do better than what has been seen?
Well, I'll be honest. I think that I think that the Liberals certainly took a lot of credit for the initial decision to fund the 200 million into the original project. And I think, at least based on my reading and my understanding of the materials, there doesn't seem to have been any sort of follow up or accountability with those federal dollars for the conduct of the project. And so, when the first issues were arising and the problems with the Acciona and its ultimate termination as the prime contractor for the project, I think that the reaction of our federal government, and in particular of our local MP, was to start with the clarification and the just to make sure there was no confusion that the federal government is not stepping up with any additional commitments whatsoever. And I actually criticized that during the 2025 election. I said that the local advocate at the federal level is supposed to be a champion for the local constituency. That to me doesn't always involve sprinting to a microphone to say that there's nothing more that the federal government can do for you here. I think that there is something that an elected representative at the federal level can do for their constituents in trying to draw attention to the need for an independent audit to find out what actually happened and to make sure that it doesn't happen again. I would also want to have conversations with my local counterparts to really question the decision by Metro to put a disproportionate burden of the cost overruns onto North Shore ratepayers. It's true that we might be the prime users of this facility, but again, it was a project that was not managed by the ratepayers of the North Shore. It was managed by Metro. And so I think that there's probably a conversation at the Metro level to open up the allocation of cost to understand if this is really something that's fair or equitable to be putting onto the North Shore ratepayers. And I know that our local mayors have started talking about this as well too. Linda Buchanan in the city of North Vancouver and Mike Little in the district of North Vancouver have both spoken up recently about the need to readdress this allocation of funding responsibility to make it more equitable. I think that our federal representative has a position to express on behalf of his constituents that should be very clear, and I intend to use my position to do just that.
Absolutely. I mean, the whole point is that you represent the people in your riding, and you have a voice in Ottawa. So I'm just surprised to hear that, especially given the amount of money that is going to go into this project, close to $700 per year. That's a significant amount of money for each household to have to fork out for something like this. So if I was the MP in Ottawa, that would be the most important thing that I'm discussing daily in Ottawa is about what affects people's pocketbooks, especially given the affordability crisis that we currently see in this country. A lot of people can't afford an additional $100, let alone $700. And the $700 is up and above all the other taxes that people
That's right.
have to pay for.
That's right.
So it's just more and more. I mean, eventually people run out of money. There's no more money. And it's so discouraging to hear that there were so many errors that were made, which has made the costs go way out of control. And there's no accountability. Where's the money? How is it? That's the first thing. So I would assume that would be the first thing you do, is to go deeper on how to fix this.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that, it's episodes like this, I think, that add to the cynicism that many in our community really have around politics generally. I mean, we should be trying to do everything we can to encourage engagement, to encourage people to remain plugged in, to educate themselves about the issues, and to form opinions and to communicate those. And we shut that right down when we have episodes like this where people are being looked at as a piggy bank. There's no real understanding of what happened, what went wrong, and there's no true accountability. I think that's the real nugget for me here about the affront that this does on engagement, and keeping people in our community satisfied that their elected officials are actually acting on their behalf actively all the time.
I would assume that with your background in law, that would be quite helpful for a situation like this with the wastewater, as well as property rights and affordability, because they're all, you'd be able to look deep into this situation and numbers with your legal background, being able to go through each document and understand everything that's inside of them.
Yeah, and actually specific to infrastructure, I spent many years of my practice, especially here in Vancouver, working on infrastructure projects. So I actually worked on P3 projects right across the country for many years, build out of hospitals and bridges, road projects. Never a wastewater sewage treatment plant, I can say, but I have a lot of experience in P3 procurement, which this was a P3 procurement, and I think that that expertise will help me not only in addressing these issues, the breakdowns, but hopefully also in working with the local experts at conceiving of some of the infrastructure that we actually, I think, need in this community, and to try and draw attention to that, and to push those ideas forward as a leader in the community.
That leads perfectly. What's your vision for North Vancouver if you were elected? The top priorities, you talked about some right now. And what opportunities exist in North Vancouver? What gives you optimism? And what would success look like after 4 years?
Okay, well, I think that what I hold out for my community. I have a lot of hope here. I think that I go back to the fact that I didn't grow up here. I'm not originally from North Vancouver. My journey here took me many years to get here, but we chose here. My family, my wife and I, because we didn't have our kids yet, we chose North Vancouver. Um, uh, because of the combination of the natural beauty, because of its proximity to our work in Vancouver at the time. It ticked a lot of boxes for us. It's a warm and welcoming community. It was a safe community. This goes back to 2014 when we first moved into the community. Um, that's important. I've seen since 2014 to 2026, where we are now, I've seen changes. I've seen, there's been some rise in property crime. I just posted something a couple of weeks ago about my next door neighbor who suffered a break-in the middle of the night in his garage. They made off with a few articles, including an electric bike. The electric bike, within 2 hours of being ripped off from this home in central Lonsdale in North Vancouver, was tracked back to East Hastings. So the problems that we're seeing in other communities are coming to our shore, or coming to our community. And people talk to me about it all the time. I've got friends up in Pemberton Heights that have talked about the rise in criminal activity in their community. It's not uncommon to be walking through neighborhoods and seeing people trying doors in the middle of the night, and seeing if the doors of cars parked on the streets are open. So I think that has been a change I've seen. I've seen the congestion on our roads over the last 10 years really increase. I've seen real challenges to the quality of life, the things that we kind of took for granted maybe 15 years ago. These are all reversible. These are the byproducts of policy choices, policy decisions. I think that when it comes to public safety and criminal justice, our party has put forward proposals to address bail reform, and to address, really truly enabling our police in the field to enforce the laws that are on the books, and to do it in a way that's efficient and effective. These are policy outcomes from bad choices that were made, uh, sometimes in Ottawa, sometimes in Victoria. We can reverse those. That's cause for hope and optimism. My vision for this community is to be one of the best places to live in this country, and for the country of Canada to be restored to its position of being one of the best places to live in the world. I truly believe that is within our potential. And one of the things that frustrates me, probably frustrates you too, Mark, and others that I know, is that we have been for some time now undershooting that potential. You talked earlier about, we should be the richest country in the world for all the different resources that we have. And just last year, going back to the talk of urgency and generational speed on these things, we simply aren't doing the things that we said that we would. I think it's fair for us to hold our leaders to account, to hold Mark Carney and the Liberals and what they were talking about last year during the general election, the promises they were making to you and to me, and to hold them to account and say, why are we not moving at these generational speeds? And again, to rebut some of the criticism about, well, it takes time for these things. I understand that governing is complex. I understand that moving policy and moving government is not an easy thing. But the promises were made. They were delivered at election time last year. They were attached oftentimes with dates, resolution of this trade dispute with the United States by July of last year. Those are promises of results. They're not promises of best efforts. I think you hold your leaders to account when they don't deliver the things that they promised. I think that this by-election is going to be our opportunity to, as I said earlier, really put the priorities of this community onto the national agenda. And I think that it's going to allow us to talk about some of the things that are going on here in North Vancouver, Capilano, that frankly we need to start making changes on. And the last thing I'll leave you with is that I know that many of my friends from the last campaign and this campaign are from the Iranian Canadian community. And this is a community that is quite large here in the North Shore region. I think we're about 170,000 people of Iranian descent who have watched the demonstrations, the killings and the shootings earlier this year in Tehran, who have lost family members, they've lost neighbors, they've lost close friends to the regime back in Iran. And they've come to me and they've asked, what would the Conservative Party do for our community? We are, I think, without doubt, the party of law and order. And I think that the message I give to a lot of my folks in the Persian and Iranian communities here on the North Shore is that an attack on you or your family is an attack on me and my family. We have an interest in making sure that the laws of the land apply not just to protect people who have been here for years and years, but to protect also the newcomers to our communities, and particularly the people that are under threat of attack. We've got last number I saw was 700 potential IRGC agents living and working here in Canada with impunity, and they put many in the community on guard all the time for threats against their personal safety. There's money laundering going on through many connections here on the North Shore that people within the Persian community, they acknowledge, they know what's going on. They even know oftentimes who is conducting this, and yet nothing is done. So I think that our party, and I'm very gratified to hear some of the statements from my leader, from Pierre Poilievre, from Melissa Lantsman, and others within the Conservative caucus. They are calling the government out for its apparent derogation on this file and the lack of their ability to truly stand up for and protect members of the Iranian diaspora. And I think that this is something that's particularly important for me in this community. I've got many, as I said, friends and neighbors and people that are connected to my campaign that are motivated and energized by the momentum and the talk that we're having around some of the issues that truly matter to them. They want safety. They want to be able to live the Canadian dream in peace and harmony. They want to build their businesses. They want to raise their families. And it can't be done when we've got other people that are bringing problems from other parts of the world to our Canadian shores. And so that's something that I'm very passionate about. I want to be able to speak up about the issue during the by-election, and hopefully, if I'm honored to be elected as the member of Parliament, to actually do something about it in Ottawa.
Yeah, you know, I've lived in the Lower Mainland my entire life in Burnaby. Going to the North Shore, I did 100 gross grinds in a year, which was a challenge of mine. I did a few years ago. North Vancouver is a second home to me. Being in Burnaby, I just crossed the bridge. It's only 15 minutes. Beautiful place. Unfortunately, Burnaby, as well as seeing a rise in crime and it's unrecognizable from just 10 years ago. And I talked to a lot of the less fortunate. I asked them, I said, you know, what's the main issue? Why do you keep going back to what you're doing? And often, every time, it's basically there's just not enough opportunity for people.
Mhm.
So I think that if we focus on, you know, obviously we need to repeat offenders and be tougher on crime, but also we need to be giving people hope. And we don't have much hope in Canada right now. Like you said, we were supposed to move at unimaginable speeds. We haven't seen anything done on the US file. That's our 75% of all our trade goes down to the United States. Mark Carney campaigned that he was the only person that can negotiate a win. And he said he would do it by July. Okay, we'll do it by, because now we're 2 weeks away and we still have zero deal, and there's millions of jobs that are at stake based on just that deal. And I've also heard that all the MOUs are subject to us getting this amazing deal with the US because all these other countries want access to the United States. So we have a lot of problems in Canada, and we should focus on all of them, not just the crime file, but give a lot of hope to people. Change can't happen from just you, Stephen.
Yeah.
Change has to happen where you can't be a spectator to the sport of politics. We can't win a race alone. So I really, this is a good opportunity for you to reach out to people out there. And how can they get involved to help you? Do you need help knocking on doors? Do you need people putting out signs on lawns? Do you need financial support? What can people do to help you? Because you cannot do this alone. And for all the people out there watching this, if you want change in Canada, if you want a Canada where your kids could have a prosperous future, they don't need free food at schools because the government has failed you. So now we have to feed kids. This is not the Canada that I grew up in. If we want change, you out there need to step up and do something. So what can people do to help you?
Well, you listed off many of the things that people can do to help with the project of change. I think that boots on the ground really matter, and I think that one of the things that I've been trying to communicate to people outside of the riding is that although we're going to be having the by-election here on the North Shore, North Vancouver, Capilano, which stretches out into West Vancouver, the that doesn't prohibit people from getting involved if they are truly passionate about change. I want to run a very positive campaign. I think that the word hope that you mentioned a number of times there is really important to me. I'm only in this because I have hope and optimism. I think that we can do better. I think that we will do better with those different policy choices. But if you actually have that same hope, and if you are motivated to see the change and to deliver that message to Ottawa that we are impatient, we want to see results. We don't want to hear about MOUs, or we don't want to hear about policy directions and things that you're negotiating and conversations that you had. We want to see shovels in the ground. We want to see actual delivery. And if you are so motivated and want to get involved, we're building a volunteer army that's going to descend upon this riding, and I think surprise a lot of people. We're going to go out there. We're going to connect with everybody within the constituency to try and get them convinced that we've got a positive message of change and hope. And it takes bodies to do that. So even if you're in Chilliwack, if you're up country, we can use all the support that we can. If you've got some, couple hours on a weekend, come out and knock some doors with us. You can help us with our signs. You can come out to events, help get involved in our events group. We're going to be doing, pretty 24/7 right through the summer. We're expecting a by-election pretty soon as well too. So the other takeaway here is that we will be working at this right throughout the summer, and so everybody's contributions would be gratified. If you can't come, if you want to support us otherwise, financial contributions are always welcome, and that's what keeps the fuel for the machine of our campaign running. The other thing you can do too is like things that we're doing today, Mark, where you're gracious to put me up in this interview and help get me my message out to the community, the broader community. I think that anything that we can do to I'm still new to the world of social media, but I think the term is to repost and to like and follow and subscribe, all those things. That really matters. And I think that that particularly matters to the younger generation that, I don't want to overlook and I don't want to, talk over here. They're the ones that I worry about the most when it comes to that hope. I mentioned that I started my professional career as a lawyer back in New York. I started, I'm dating myself here, but this is 2005. So I've been practicing for over 20 years. Uh, and we made the decision to come back to Canada because that wasn't a sacrifice. It was home to both myself and my wife. We were comfortable there, our families, our friends, our networks. We wanted to come back and build our careers, build our practices, build our family in Canada. And it wasn't a sacrifice. There was plenty of opportunity. This is a short time ago. This is 2010. Um, Things have changed since 2010. Things have changed dramatically. So my kids now, my son is going to be entering high school pretty soon. I know for a fact that if we're continue on our current trajectory, that he's simply not going to have the same kind of choices and advantages that I had when I was in his position as a young boy, a young man, and even when I had coming back to this country in 2010. And so that brings it right down to the real reason that I'm doing this, that my wife is passionate about this project, is that we truly want to do better for that next generation. It's unacceptable to leave something worse off than you found it. And so I think that that's the message of hope really resonates with young people, and young people are mostly engaged with social media these days. And so it's a great, effective way of getting our message out and getting more volunteers to the doorsteps and helping me bring this home in the coming by-election.
That's a great message. You know, I have to say, like, I had a very successful career in commercial real estate finance, and I just woke up looking at my children. I said, you know what? I can't sit here and do nothing. If not me, then who? If not now, then when? It's go time. We got to save this country. We cannot leave this country worse off to our children than what we had it handed to us. And that's where we're heading if we continue down this road. So it looks like you need volunteers, people making phone calls, people creating content and supporting the movement, and try to gain more volunteers, lawn signs, financial help. Where can people I'll leave a link in the video description. Can people just, you have the website that you can leave me, and then people could click and then register to do any of this stuff, or how can they
Yeah,
make a
absolutely. So that's actually going to our website. My website's www.stephencurran.ca, and we'll have that link for everybody watching. That is the best way to get connected with the campaign. You're going to have an opportunity if you want to make a financial contribution through our website. There's an opportunity to give your details there so we can contact you for volunteer opportunities. If you live in the riding and you want to commit to support our campaign and support to vote, leave your details there so we can make sure that you're in the database. We can let you know when the advance polls are open, when election day is actually happening. And more importantly, too, if you leave your details, we can let you know about some of the events that we're having. So we're gearing up for a busy season of visits from visiting MPs and other dignitaries coming into the riding to come talk to us and let us know about how important this is. I think that it's going to be an excellent opportunity to get connected with our conservative movement. And so if you're so inclined and want to get that connection, please visit the website and register. And we look forward to seeing you here on the North Shore.
Yeah, and so Stephen just said it. If you're in the Lower Mainland and you want to be part of the movement, go ahead, register, and make a movement. Maybe I'll see you because I want to help you, Stephen. I think you have a very good opportunity here. This is your time, and it's going to start. The change is going to start from the West. Carrie Lynn Finley won. You're going to win, and it's going to move all the way across this nation. And there is hope out there, guys. There is hope. Help Stephen win. So if there's one last thing that you want the viewers of today's episode and this interview to leave with, what is it?
Well, I think that I agree with you. This is a signature opportunity for us, and to try and actually change the narrative right across the country. It's going to be a lot of hard work, though, and I don't take anything for granted. But that's okay. We like hard work. Conservatives have never always been on the easy side of the arguments. We like to stand up for what we think is right. We like to have a free exchange of ideas and debate, and come to the solution and move forward. And so I'm thrilled to participate in this interview with you today, Mark. I think that the work that you're doing in getting your message out there and trying to affect, as you say, that positive change for our country. It's really well appreciated. I think you should get a round of applause from everybody online. And I'm thrilled to be here with you today. And I feel good about our chances, but it's going to take a lot of hard work. And hard work never killed anybody. So I'm looking forward to seeing you here on the North Shore.
Amazing. Yeah. So the people out there, and I'm saying it again, just if you could do 2 hours, get off that couch and help the campaign, you could make a difference. And that's why I wake up and make my content. I feel like I'm making a difference on a daily basis. So thank you so much, Stephen, for taking the time for this interview, and share this video with everybody you know and register for Stephen's campaign.
Thanks very much, Mark. And thank you very much, everyone watching. I appreciate all the support that we've received so far and look forward to seeing you on Election Day.